everybody, and welcome to Outlast Podcast movie review for Aladdin, the new movie that just came out this weekend. We are just doing the 3 one-offs for the reviews because of scheduling situations. We couldn't do like our news, whatever. I'll announce it on Twitter, but in case you're just a listener and we love you for that, what's happening is we're going to do the Aladdin one today. Tomorrow will be Brightburn, and then the day after will be John Wick 3. John Wick 3 is a little late because it was supposed to be last week, but, it's scheduled, guys. We got summer vacation. Everybody's got their things to do. This is bound to happen, and I'm just happy we have such good fans that are willing to wait, so that's fantastic. Next week, we will have a normal episode coming at you with all the fun news, and there has been news stacking up, and I'm getting antsy, so we'll get into that then. But let's right now talk about Aladdin, 2019, directed by Guy Ritchie. He's the director of like Snatch and Sherlock Holmes and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. This does not feel like a Guy Ritchie movie, though. I'm going to give you that right now. So I almost feel like the director doesn't matter because it just doesn't reflect his other work. Maybe King Arthur. He did King Arthur, and it maybe has a little bit of that. First impressions, just right off the gate, guys. This movie takes no chances. It feels real cheap, real basic. Acting, I'm normally a pretty positive guy. Listen to our Game of Thrones episodes to understand that normally I am a pretty positive guy. I usually take the positive take on things because I know there's a lot of hard work behind it, and I appreciate the entertainment value of everything. But this acting was pretty awful by everybody but one. Maybe two, but one for sure that stood out and surprised me, and that was Will Smith. Guys, I'm telling you, I know you're worried. I was worried about him taking over as Genie. He kills it. He's awesome as Genie. I will give it to this. The CGI, because of course they do blue and then they do him in normal. The CGI for the blue is a little hard to get used to. But he goes back to normal quite often. He is awesome in this movie. Kills it, okay? So, before we get into the big descriptors, the way we're going to do this review is, normally when we do a movie review, we'll break down director and blah, blah, blah. We'll give it all a big score. At the end and stuff like that, based off of like a little algorithm we put up together, and it's the most basic algorithm in the world. But anyways, this time what we're going to do, this is going to be more in vein of the Game of Thrones ones, because we've been getting a lot of good feedback from the Game of Thrones episodes. Other fellow podcasts and just listeners that get a hold of us on Twitter or that I know in real life, they've been really enjoying the Game of Thrones ones. So this will be similar in that format and that in a way that we'll just kind of go over the movie, what had happened, and then just my thoughts as we go along. I'm not going to worry about... I'm going to go full spoilers on this because it's Aladdin. You guys know this movie already. You know the story already. It's nothing surprising. They did not try to deviate by much. It's pretty simple. It's the movie. It's honestly the cartoon version made live action. There's 2 additional songs. There's all the original songs. I'm pretty sure it's all of them. So nothing too crazy there. Yeah, so that's about it. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we'll start off with... At the opening scene, we had a little bit of a twist on things where it's Will Smith. He's as a human, and he's just telling a story to his 2 kids on a boat. So we're led to believe that this is if you're an adult. So that's one thing too. Is we'll go with the kids movie thing. This is definitely more geared towards the children, and I almost feel like they are pulling a nostalgia, but it's not necessarily for the adults that remember the original movie because it almost feels too young. And so they are definitely pulling from the nostalgia though with the soundtrack. There's no doubt that they're using the original soundtrack on a lot of this stuff. But anyway, so we start with a Genie. Will Smith is on the boat and he's talking to his 2 kids, and he's like, "Oh, they want a story," so he's gonna tell them a story, and he starts kind of singing them the beginning, and it's actually the intro to the original Aladdin, and he does a good job. That's not his best performance singing wise in this movie, but he does do a solid work. And then we move along, and the first thing you see is Agrabah, and it's colorful, and honestly, it looks more real than I had expected. It looks well lived in. You have the tans and the browns that you expect on all the walls, but yet you have laundry hanging up. This is everybody's costume. The costume work in this movie is top notch. In the fact that they decided, you know what, guys, let's go full silks. Let's go full bright colors, yellows, blues, reds, greens. Everything they had, they used them all, so everything really popped. And when you have it on the back of that sandstone, it makes it even shine more. So, you know what? That was a choice that they decided to go with. I think it definitely brightens the entire film up. And it takes away, plot wise, it does take away from the dramatic effect, I think, sometimes. When like Jafar transitions from one costume to another at the end, you guys know what I'm talking about. Uh, as he's getting brighter and brighter, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's cool, looks cool, but I feel like this should be a dark moment, and yet everybody looks so great. Everybody's so bright. So, but anyways, yeah. So Agrabah looks amazing. I mean, they definitely CGI'd. You could tell like the main courtyard that they use, the bazaar is what they actually call it. The bazaar is used multiple times throughout the film. You could tell that they just kind of like had location shots within that bazaar scene. They built the bazaar, but everything else was CGI'd around it, which that's filmmaking. The palace was also a set that they reused a couple times in different ways. You could tell, but that's how life works. You have a budget, you got to work within it. That's what they did, but it looks great. Speaking of CGI, the CGI and all the animals in Abu and what's the name? Rasha, the tiger, and Iago. Iago's there. Iago, we didn't see in any of the trailers. He is in the film. All really good. All solid CGI work. That's something that Disney's really locked on well, is CGI for animals. Hopefully it's really good in Lion King. Fingers crossed. We have a lot of backstory and it kind of like subtle backstory being told throughout the back. I did enjoy that. I read a book at one point, and I can't remember, A Twisted Tale, actually. Ooh, good. It's called A Twisted Tale, and it's about like Aladdin if he didn't actually have the lamp the whole time. And it kind of reminded me of that, because it kind of told the story of like what it's like to be a street rat, where you trade goods in, and where there's like an allegiance amongst other street rats. I like that idea, and we get a little bit of that in this. Moving right along, we have musical kick in, and it's funny how, for me, well, let's back up a little bit. We're introduced to Aladdin, and this actor, his name is, oh boy, hopefully I get this right, guys. I'm sorry. Mina, I may be getting this right or wrong, and I'm sorry about that. Mina Massoud. He plays in the Jack Ryan Show. He's 27 years old. It's not that he's a bad actor. It's just that I just don't feel him as the Aladdin I wanted. I think he's portraying the Aladdin of the cartoon quite well. But I was hoping when they went live action, they would take more chances. Give us a real, authentic feeling Agrabah. This is your chance to really be more inclusive. And I think that, so they had two things they could really be inclusive on. Is the culture that Agrabah is portraying. And in this story, we see that it's a lot about like women rights, because Jasmine can't pick her husband and stuff like that. So those are the two big tackles they could have taken, right? And they decided to take one and then kind of show a little bit of the other one. So we get a lot of Jasmine's rights, although it does kind of feel a little flat to me. But the cultural part, I feel like it's just not quite there. You know who does it perfectly? Black Panther. Black Panther nails it. Because Black Panther, you feel like the different accents and everything like that, and they make sense when you hear the story of how like, it's different parts of Africa came together to create Wakanda. That makes sense. And in this, I'm just like, okay, Jafar and the Sultan have accents. Aladdin doesn't have accent, and you find out the actor grew up in Canada, and then Jasmine doesn't have an accent. Her dad does. And she grew up in Britain. So it's kind of like one of these things where it's like, okay, it's just one of those things they just didn't do too much on. And I hate to push in on that kind of stuff because it can get blown out of proportion. Sometimes you just got to cast what you can cast. And especially when it's big name actors, you got to get the good names. Talking about a really good name actor, Nazmin Pedrad from SNL's in this. She plays the handmaiden to Jasmine. I love her. I want her to be Jasmine because I love the actress. But she's a little bit too old for it. I don't think she really is, but okay. She's too old to be Jasmine, but not by much. Anyways, so going into this, I want you guys to keep in mind, I'm not a big fan of Aladdin the actor, but when Will Smith comes in, he really helps him a lot because he takes away a lot of the tension in the scene, and that helps a lot. So as I'm going on and I'm explaining situations, I may be a little biased. A whole new world when it's him and Jasmine playing together. The actress who plays Jasmine is, I have it here, it's Naomi Scott. It falls a little flat for me. So anyways, we get into that as we go. Okay, so yeah, they're breaking a song and we're getting that first like street rat, head of the bread line. Oh, guys, I pulled that out of my butt right there. That was, you gotta admit, that was pretty good singing. Anyways, and it's the original song with a little twist on it, and they do kind of show some of the signature shots that you recognize, which I do appreciate, because again, that's that nostalgia effect. That's what these movies are for. It's a new way to introduce the same story we already know. So lean on the nostalgia. That's perfectly fine. And so we're going through that. We get the songs, but I'm realizing I'm not a big fan of musicals. I think, and it's something I just really wasn't exposed to much as a child. And growing up, I respect some like Les Miserables and stuff like that. I really enjoy those. But this one, it just kind of felt like, okay, we got another song, and I know these songs. I was singing along with them, to be honest with you. A little bit. I'm not in the theaters. I gotta be classy, They're classic songs. I gotta, I'll tell them that much. Anyway, so we're going along, and then we eventually come across Jafar. My big complaint with, it's the normal storyline, so I'm not gonna break down the whole storyline. I'm just kind of going over my key points as I'm watching it. We are introduced to Jafar, and he's with the Sultan. He's got his staff, and everything about Jafar and the scenes that we're seeing. It kind of feels like, when you're watching a movie like on Lifetime channel or something like that. Like, I'm sure your mom, you guys all have moms, or you yourself, I'm not judging, but you watch a Lifetime channel, right? Every time I walk into my parents' house and I see my mom watching Lifetime channel, I always call it like, yeah, that neighbor right there, that one's going to kill this one. Yeah, it's just because everything's so cheap and it's just reused. The acting's not great. I got a lot of that vibe out of this. And Jafar's staff looks so cheap and just janky that I'm just like, oh God, it's sickening looking at that thing. You're taking me out of this whole movie. Now, the actor that played Jafar, his name is Maram Kensari. Again, sorry with the names if I don't have that right, but he did a great job. I think he's a little too young for the role. He's only 35 compared to Aladdin, who's 27. I think he's a little too young for the role. I wish he was an older actor, but he himself does a really good job. He portrays the position well. And I do like the twist they do on Jafar. I'll go ahead and mention this now. Is later on when him and Aladdin are speaking, the idea is Jafar was a street rat at one point and now has risen up the ranks to what a maximum street rat could be. Someone who, you steal an apple, it's not that big of a deal, but if you could steal a kingdom, like you're the best street rat. So I really like that aspect. It kind of added a little behind, Jafar's coolness. It was cool. They have this side plot they're introducing in the beginning of this is our first kind of like foray into how the women need rights. And Jasmine's, she's turning down all these male suitors that come around. That's classic Jasmine. But she's like, why can't I be the Sultan? And mind blown. I don't know why I never thought about that when I watched it when I was a kid growing up. I watched that movie 100 times. I never thought of why doesn't just Jasmine be the Sultan? Yeah, it's perfect. I know in the culture it couldn't be, but for the movie, yeah, that's a great way. That's a great point to bring up, is just make Jasmine the Sultan. And so they kind of introduced that plot early on. And I like that. It was something to kind of keep in mind as you're watching along. We get Jasmine's first song. She ends up having 2 of her own songs in this movie that are fully original. And how did I feel about those? They were pretty good. It's hard because the other ones, like, the song and you're loving it. And so you even know the shots. So even like during the Street Rats one, and you see him kind of like fall into the harem, and they're like, oh, Aladdin, and you're like, oh man, that's just like the original. That's great. So you're kind of like in love with it already. So the new songs, they were good, but they didn't like embrace me the same way. So you can't, what are you going to do? The story where Jasmine and Aladdin meet up, their whole like that first courtship and stuff like that, it's such a mess. It feels like, did these guys watch the original? Did they know the original? I mean, it just felt like a mess. You had like this whole confused thing where like, let me give the bracelet to this guy, and then let me steal the bracelet back, and let me steal the. It was like a meet cute, but nobody's paying attention to what's going on. Nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's communicating a consistent story to make it make sense. And that premise continues throughout the whole movie. We'll just go ahead and fast forward through this whole thing and kind of explain that as the movie's going on, one of the linchpins in the Aladdin storyline is the idea that Jasmine doesn't understand that Prince Ali is Aladdin. And they kind of hint at the fact that, oh, they see what they want to see. There's some genie magic in that. But anyways, they end up messing it up to where during the carpet flight, it's so dumb. Jasmine figures out that he's Aladdin. And then Aladdin says, oh, well, that's because I came a few days early to understand how your city is, so I was pretending to be Aladdin the whole time. You know what you did right there? You just totally took away every bit of amazingness out of Aladdin, the character. And now you're lying to Jasmine. You're making the moments that we're having now in the beginning of the movie where they're like this like meet cute part where like she's starting to warm up, but he's feeling like he's trapped by being a street rat, and she feels like she's trapped by being behind the palace walls. One sees the palace as you're erasing all of the valid moments through that. Now Jasmine's looking back at that moment. In this moment right here, she's looking back at those like, that was all just a lie. That meant nothing. That was another rich kid talking to a rich kid. So you just ruined so much stuff doing that plot. And then we go further along and Jasmine's thinking this, and then Aladdin's talking to Genie like, I'll just be a prince, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't need to be, this movie could have been half as long and much better if they did it. Anyway, so I just felt like their whole meeting up and stuff like that was far messier than the animated version. That's one thing that this movie's going to suffer from no matter what, is being compared to the animated version. One of the best Disney animated movies of all time. So it's really hard. Okay, so, there's a few things that are a little kiddish. There's a part where like, he's like, the guards are right behind me, right? And like, oh yeah, the guards are right behind him. That's after Aladdin, by the way, is able to sneak into the palace, give Jasmine this thing and steal another piece of her jewelry so he can bring her back. A whole mess. Anyways. So yeah, there's little scenes like that. Jafar likes him and then he says, hey, I'm going to have you do the, get the lamp thing. So we all know that's normal story. When we meet Magic Carpet, CGI on the Magic Carpet's solid. That was something I was worried about, because how are you going to convey the carpet to have a personality like they did in the animated version? Did good. Not a complaint. Some of the best cinematography in the movie. I mean, it was CGI, so they had to really be careful with this. While Aladdin's reaching for the lamp, a ruby drops, and it falls in front of Abu. Abu, guys, is awesome in this movie. They did a really good job of making him just seem so lovable and a scamp and everything that Abu is. Anyway, so this ruby falls and the light shines on him and you see his eyes glow red. And it's just like you know what he's going to do. We all know what he's going to do. But if you had never seen Aladdin before, you're like, oh no, he's going to do it. Even knowing what he's going to do, I was excited by it. It was cool. It was neat. They did a really good job with that. So I really liked Abu. But anyways, that one shot where Abu's tempted to grab the ruby and he does. And almost like the ruby like falls into his hand. And then he's like, I have it. Anyway, so I'm doing a lot of hand motions that I'm sure you guys are loving. It was shot very well. So that moment right there, I just wanted to give a shout out to, because I know that one could not have been easy with all the CGI work and all the lighting effects. That was really good. And then we have, Cave of Wonders is collapsing. The cave looks pretty good. Anyway, so all that jazz. They get out, and the whole time we're getting a lot of musical cues. Something you guys might not pay attention to originally, but they're using similar stuff from the original soundtrack, and they're bringing it into this one, and it's like, it really helps the moments, because then you're like, oh, okay, yeah. It kind of helps patch up some of the not so great shots or moments that are falling a little flat. It's really helping a lot. So that saves a lot of those moments. We get into, the genie coming out, and this is the first moment. I tell you, when you guys first see him, you're like, oh man, the CGI, that is rough. But then Will Smith starts to kind of act, and he starts to get bold. We get that initial genie song, which, guys, okay, I just complained about the music. They freaking killed it. It was a huge musical number that must have cost a fortune to do, where Aladdin's introducing himself. There's multiple versions, Genie. There's multiple versions of Genie. They really did a pretty good job of remaking the original, but putting their own thing on it. And there's even like a beatboxing part where Will Smith did, but I know you're already thinking like, oh, that's so dumb. No, it was great. They did great. That song, that part of the movie was very enjoyable. I would rewatch that part. It was really, really good. So props to them. Let's see. And again, he's acting really well. It's just the CGI is just a little shaky. So get past that. All his effects when he does magic does really good. There is a part later on, they get out of the Cave of Wonders. It is a trick, yada, yada, yada. Not actually a wish. We're out of there, and he's changing, and he's giving him the Prince Ali thing. Changing him into Prince Ali, and I really liked the way they did the effect of him, like, dressing him into different things. The magic effect worked really well. One small complaint, and this is stupid, I know it is, but they're changing Abu into the different animals. Classic, you guys know what I'm talking about, the camel. They didn't change him into a car. I wanted one time for him to change him into a car. That was so funny in the original movie. I wanted to see an old school red Bel Air. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It's in the original movie. Changed Abu into a red Bel Air. No, they didn't. Anyways, they went to like camel or donkey, camel, elephant. I think that was the order. Anyways, but it's what it is. So it was fine. Then we get into the Prince Ali parade. It was very good. It was all in that big bazaar that I was telling you guys about that you could tell they keep reshooting. And I felt like this parade, it's a very doable parade. As in, okay, so say you're at Disneyland. If you guys have gone to Disneyland, if you haven't, you need to go. I know it's expensive, but please do. It's amazing there. But they always have these parades. And actually, I went to Disneyland as a kid, after Aladdin came out, but we hadn't had a chance to watch it yet. We were going to Disneyland. I went to Disneyland. I learned about Aladdin through the parades. I know that's crazy. It's just, I did. I knew the songs. I knew all that before I watched Aladdin. I watched Aladdin, got my mind blown a few more times. But yeah, so I met Jafar. I met the actor playing, the Jafar at Disneyland before I knew who Jafar was. I saw Aladdin and everything like that. So this felt like what could be a Disneyland parade, whereas it's a lot of great dancing, a very big spectacle. They made sure that Will Smith was doing some of the signature moves from the original. The animals, of course, couldn't be at Disneyland, but they could do fake animals and stuff like that. But it was a really good parade. It was very scaled down in the original because, of course, it had to be. But it was still very good. I gotta tell you guys, I keep fanboying over him, but it was Will Smith. He was sold it. Again, that's a moment I really would want to rewatch. Not because of Aladdin, not because of Mena Massoud. No, Will Smith was killing it. He did a great job. So props to him. There's a little side plot that as we're going along, there's a little flirtation thing between Genie and Jasmine's handmaiden. That's the one played by Nasim. I keep saying Nazim. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of hers and I can't say her name right. Anyway, so I really like that little side plot. It was like, your boy, my boy, but really it was cute. It was a good little move. And then we're moving along and we're getting we get that moment where it's like Prince Ali is Aladdin, but Aladdin was Prince Ali. Oh God, it was such a bad move. I don't understand why they did that. The saving Aladdin part when he goes into the water, something and like rubs the lamp and he like forces him to use a wish on it. I didn't care for that move. And I don't remember if it was in the original. I don't think it was. I think it was a moment where Genie was showing he was a friend. But this one, and I could be wrong, guys. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's not in the original. In this one, he like forces him to write it down underwater, so he uses it as a wish. It's very hackney. I didn't care for that moment, but that's in there too. Okay, so we're moving along here, guys, and we have Aladdin. At some point, this is all going down, and now he's kind of stuck in this crazy twisted plot where he has to pretend like he was Prince Ali this whole time. And Genie's been warning him, like, be careful about taking in too much power because that can be corrupting. And it's something we've seen before, and that's a good idea to keep in mind because it's something we see Jafar has already done. So it's something to keep in mind as you're watching this and as you're watching your character develop. But then we have this outlawed exposition from Aladdin who's basically saying, like, of course he already promised the last wish to Genie to set him free. Classic Aladdin. But now we're seeing him out loud say everything like word for word, really, of what Genie had warned him about. And so it's kind of like, I get what you're doing, and I get it's because it's for a younger audience, but for an adult, it was excruciating to hear Prince Ali pretend I'll just be Prince Ali forever. You already created the country. You had it because he had put it on a map. And everything's perfect. Everything's fine. And he was like saying some of the words, like some of the key terms that Genie had used earlier. And it was kind of like, oh, guys, you're a little heavy handed on this. And I get it because I'm not the audience. I understand that. But still, it's like, ugh, that's terrible. Anyway, so we finally get to Jafar. He's going full on, I'm the bad guy now. I don't care about y'all. He has costume change. He ends up using his like ability to steal, which is a cool way to do it, to steal the lamp off of Aladdin. So he now has control of Genie. And then his first wish, Jafar's first wish, is make me Sultan. Okay, so let's explain how terrible that is. We see that later on, that's like a name alone. That does nothing. All he did was a costume change. Like, boom, hey, congratulations, you're Sultan now. Hey, guess what, guys? I'm making you all Sultans now. It means nothing in this movie. It's funny. So after he does that, the head of the guards, Hakim, which again in the book's not very good. Don't get me wrong. And we've talked about it before. I think on this podcast, we talked about it about a year ago on this podcast. Top 10 Disney princesses, or top 5 Disney princesses, I think. Go back and listen to that one. That's a good one with Diana. Thank you, Diana. Anyway, so in that book, Hakim's a much bigger character. He's the head of the guards. You see him in the movie too. And then here we see Hakim again. And he's one of my favorite characters after that book. But Jafar's made the new Sultan. And then Jafar commands Hakim and his troop. He says, tell your troops to like arrest the old Sultan or whatever. And Hakim's like, well, I have to betray the Sultan. And he like follows Jafar. And it's because he's the new Sultan. And Jasmine's trying to explain like anyway, so it's kind of a bad character moment for Hakim and for the guards that like, hey, this guy who's just made king, don't have any mission, or I don't have any kind of, what's that called? Agency of my own to make my own decisions. Like, this is not a worthy Sultan. I'm just going to do it because this big genie over here said he's Sultan now and he changed his clothes. And so you're kind of like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Then Jasmine has this other song, which is a good song, but it was a little misleading because they like the way they shot it, they like made everybody in the room disappear. So it's kind of like you actually like took us away to make the song. Anyways, that's dumb. After the song, she has a conversation, or she talks to Hakim, again, the leader of the guards, and says, "We found you as a kid. You became our most trusted guard. Yada, yada, yada. You're better than this." Then he has a change of heart, and he tells his guards, "Arrest Jafaar." And then it really does dawn you, like, holy cow, yeah, Jafaar was made Sultan by name alone. His meaning means nothing. And then you realize as it's showing, like, outer shots, the sky is clear, the town's bustling. No, in the animated movie, they put, like, a big hurricane above them. Like, you saw it actually affect all of Agrabah, when really this whole magic effect of him becoming Sultan happened just in that single little room, tiny little living space. No, in that single little room. And it was kind of like, okay, whatever. I would have done it differently, but that's okay. And so, yeah, Hakim attacks, and then Jafaar does like, well, then I'll become a sorcerer. And when he's a sorcerer, the effects are done very well. Again, CGI budget solid. He like makes people banish away. He says he's banishing him in the jungle, or in the dungeon. So we have to assume like he doesn't turn the tiger into a kitten like in the movie. He just banishes him into the dungeon. Everybody's into the dungeon. Blah 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 blah. Everybody, all the guards. So we have the Sultan, Jasmine. Jasmine's handmaid, and Dahlia is her name in this, and then a couple other people. So but none of the guards. And it's kind of going down in a very soft way of how the things go in a animated one, and we're gonna wrap things up because I want to try to hit under 30 minutes. But basically, what happens is Jafar's talking about how like I'm gonna be able to invade all of our neighbors, because that's one of his things he mentioned earlier on. He wants to invade the neighbor nations that don't have any army, and one of them is Jasmine's mom's old nation, and he's always wanted to do that. Sultan didn't want to do that, and so Aladdin comes in. He shatters the staff, and there is this one moment where they're doing like this. They're trying to get it's kind of a cutaway, like they needed an action point, but it was shot well, where they're flying away and they have the lamp, and Jafaar makes Iago big like a little dragon type of thing, and chases him around. It was shot well, but it wasn't needed at all. It was kind of just a waste of our time. But it was shot well. I gotta give him props where props is due. So good job over there. And we're at this scene now where he's saying like, "I'm powerful. I'm gonna invade all the neighbors." And then Aladdin's like, "Hold on, you're not the most powerful man in the room." And he kind of reminds him of like how Jafaar or the Iago always calls him second best or stuff like that. And he explains like, Genie's the one that's magical. He's the one that gave you all your powers. He could take it away at some point. And, you're never as powerful as him. And Will Smith, we see, kind of catches on at some point, yada, yada, yada. We all seen this before. Jafaar makes his wish. He gets turned into the genie. The effects are solid on this. I really like this part. He's about to make a lightning ball big enough he's just going to throw it and destroy the city that is, or the kingdom that is Jasmine's mom's kingdom. And he says it, and as he's cocking his hand back to throw this lightning bolt, boy, my sound effects are fantastic, right, guys? I hope you enjoyed those. It's a metal clamp that comes around his arm, then the one around the other one, just like Genie, and he becomes, enslaved into the genie hood. Enslaved into genie hood. I think that's what it's called. So he's put into the lamp. He brings Iago with him. Classic, classic, classic. And boom, Jafar's done. Okay, everything's good. They do have the moment I really liked on the side there where Genie and Aladdin are talking about, like, everybody's kind of recovering. Genie and Aladdin are talking like, okay, man, last wish. Genie has conveyed to Aladdin, like, I just want you to be happy, man. You do the thing that makes you happy. I don't care about my freedom. And so he says, like, you could get rid of this rule that says that she has to marry a prince. And I liked that idea. That was a good idea. That's something that could have been introduced in the earlier movie. And so then Aladdin makes his wish, and he actually makes the wish to free Genie. This is great. And so we now are kind of like, so Genie's now in full Will Smith form. He looks just like Will Smith, and he's happy, and it's a really heartwarming moment. And it was well done. And I think at this point, I'm actually starting to warm up to the actor. he's not bad. And so they're doing well. And then, Aladdin leaves because he realizes but Jasmine's handmaiden, Dahlia and Genie are going to get together. They're going to sail a boat to talk about, like, we're going to get a big boat. And he's like, oh, a little boat. So they're going to sail a boat. So we see that we now know that before that boat ride is actually the two of them together. So that's just a heads up, is the kids are actually Dahlia's kids as well. And Aladdin's walking out of the palace, and Jasmine talks to her dad and like, look, I'm going to be the Sultan. I can do this, yada, yada, yada. So now she's the Sultan. I really like that they did that. A lot of women choices in this thing. And I really like that they made sure to really push that home. That was a brave choice. Or it was rectifying an old bad choice, basically, and giving old Jasmine not enough say in her destiny. And this one was like, boom, she's the Sultan, actually. So she can marry whoever she wants. It's not that the dad took away that rule. No, you're the Sultan. If you want that rule to be gone, you make that rule gone. You're the Sultan. So that was really cool that they did that. So she goes out there, yay, Aladdin, we're best friends now, blah, 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 blah. So that's all wrapped up. And we finish off with Dahlia and Genie with their kids on the boat. And it's a happy ending. And that's how it goes. So overall, like music and stuff like that, I think did pretty good. You know, they used a lot of the originals, so you can't give them too much credit. But again, and you know, even the new songs weren't bad. I think the acting might have been its lowest point, and I think sometimes it felt too cheap. I think costume design. I think they took chances in some of the places and they failed. That's the problem right there. Costume design, I think, looked bright and beautiful, but in some moments that was actually the downfall. Like when Jafar is scaling up, he's like turning like brighter colors sometimes. So they're kind of like, well, no, you shouldn't go from black to red. Should have gone like a lighter red to a black. Like black should be endgame look. But I know that his genie form is red, so it makes sense. Although genie form, by the way, guys, don't get your hopes up. His genie form in this, he's just a taller human. That part wasn't great. Casting, I think, could have been cleaned up. But I will give him Will Smith. Will Smith was a huge surprise to me. He actually was quite good. So I'll give him that. But yeah, so let's give him a score, guys. Out of 100. Normally I have my math to put together. But I circled a number. I wrote it down earlier. I think they're worth, maybe go a little. Nah, okay, let's go 67 out of 100. That's what I'm thinking. I'm real wishy-washy on this. This is why I need my math, guys. This is why I need my calculator and my 20% for this and all stuff like that. But I'm going to go 67 over 100. That's a D+, and it's because I think they could have taken chances in the right places, and I think they really failed hard on some. The whole feeling of this was too cheap, and there's a lot of unnecessary plots. There was a whole bunch of dating stuff that you guys, it was just, I didn't even mention it because it wasn't worth mentioning. Or like, oh, you should talk to her. Oh, no, you should talk to her. It was garbage. I'm not going to mention it. Anyways, so I think that this movie was unsuccessful. I'm looking forward to other movies. The Disney live-action movies, I really think they're hit and miss. Jungle Book, I really like Jungle Book. I'm looking forward to Lion King. I'm hoping it's good. Beauty and the Beast was good. Cinderella, okay. Maleficent, I haven't seen yet, but Squeaks, you guys are familiar with Squeaks, is just not a fan of it, and he's not going to watch the next one, which is surprising. He's a big Maleficent fan. But yeah, so I'm going to go 67 out of 100, guys, a D+. It's just not impressive to me. Not a real good attempt. It would have probably been lower. It probably would have been in the 50% zone, which we all know means F, if it were not for Will Smith really carrying it home. And the CGI on the animals was good. The music in there, you know, I think if you're not a old school Aladdin fan, you might like it more. But I grew up on this movie. I grew up on this, Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King. Those are my jams. So you can't mess those up. Like I'm saying, like you gotta master those to make me happy. And I know that means I'm biased on this, but so be it. That's how this is. You guys are hearing this from a very biased person in this who wanted, if you're gonna go with the Aladdin story, you need to do one of two things. You needed to just purely remake the first movie. And it seems like they tried to do that. They just made some tweaks that ended up making it worse. So, okay. Or you need to go really out there and just try to make it as authentic as possible. And I would have respected the heck out of that. But I almost think Disney can't make that movie. So I think they have to lean on the songs. I almost like to say, like, don't do songs. Make it as authentic of a story as possible. I would have been interested in that more, I think. But I don't know. This has to hit 4 quadrants. And I think it's hitting at least 2 of them for sure, the kids ones. So, you know, I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't go to the theaters. I'd probably wouldn't even buy it on. Wait for Disney Plus, guys. Disney Plus is coming soon. You can binge watch all the Disneys you want. This will be one of them. I would just wait till then. So this is a wait to stream one, okay? That's where we're going to rank it right there. 67% wait to stream. All right, guys. So Brightburn's tomorrow. John Wick after that. And that's it for us, guys. I got a lot of movies to watch still. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Thank you for joining us on the Geek Freaks podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Geek Freaks Pod. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. You can email us. We have our Patreon and a store. All those links are in the description. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.